Hello, world history students. Today's lecture is on ancient belief systems. I'm going to be talking about three different belief systems. This is Unit 1 and it's Part 5. It's really the end of the new information from this unit. The first of these systems of spiritual beliefs that I want to talk about is called Hinduism. And Hinduism goes back to about 1500 BCE. It comes into the Indus River Valley or into the Indian subcontinent, brought there by a group of people called the Aryans. The Aryans are migrating, or oftentimes they say that they are invading other people who are already living in India. And there is no one specific founder of Hinduism. Oftentimes we see that happening, that you have one person who is credited with being the founder. Not with Hinduism. It's just this whole group of Aryan people, their sacred texts called the Vedas, and they bring their ideas, and through cultural diffusion, it spreads into the Indian subcontinent. Really, the religion has a number of different gods, and we won't really get into that. It kind of changes over time, or the interpretation of one god or three gods or many gods changes. Really want to concentrate on the idea of reincarnation, and the ultimate goal of existence is to attain something called moksha, which is a perfect understanding of all things. And when a soul becomes so enlightened that it understands all things, it's liberated from reincarnation, or samsara, the cycle of reincarnation, where a soul is born into a body and lives in that body, and then dies, and it gets born into a new body, and that happens over and over and over again. Once again, that's called samsara. If one can overcome that being born and dying, and being born and being dying, because they've become liberated through moksha, then the soul is at rest, so to speak. Once again, human life is centered in the individual soul. The soul continues on beyond human life. Dharma is really quite important to the core Hindu beliefs. Dharma is one's duties, one's social duties, what one has to do in their life, what moral obligations they have to fulfill, what expectations are put upon them. And this is not the same for every single person. It's dictated by the class that they belong to, or the caste that they belong to, and the stage of life. If you're a young person or a middle-aged person or old person, your dharma, your obligations, your social duties, and what people expect of you change over time. Of course, people live their lives and they commit actions, or they commit deeds. Every individual does that. They make decisions. And what they decide to do, how they live, how they act, has consequences for their next life. They can do good things and get good karma, or maybe they do some bad things and get bad karma. And at the end of their life, when they're reborn, that karma from the life that they just lived influences what kind of a life they have next time. You can see then that the reincarnation, or the rebirth, is the soul living on, and the karma, deciding what kind of a life they're going to have. They get to live again and again and again through samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. A somewhat similar system of belief is Buddhism, and Buddhism was actually founded by a person by the name of Siddhartha Gautama, who lived about 563 BCE, also in India. Buddhism differs from Hinduism in that there are no gods or goddesses, but it is very similar in the sense that there is karma, there is dharma, but there is no connection then to a social caste system. What every individual does, regardless of wealth or status or caste, is pretty much the same. Still has reincarnation, still has that belief in samsara, the cycle of birth and death, and so on. However, there are a couple of different things that Buddha came up with. One of them is called the Four Noble Truths, and the other one is called the Eightfold Path. The Four Noble Truths has to do with what life is like, and how one should be. And then the Eightfold Path is a path by which people should take to live the perfect life, to become enlightened, to gain a state of endless happiness and peace called nirvana. So the Four Noble Truths start with Siddhartha Gautama, or Buddha, realizing that life itself is filled with suffering and sorrow. And he believes that the cause of all suffering is people's selfish desire for temporary pleasures of the world, like riches and good food and fancy clothes and all those sorts of things. For a while, Siddhartha Gautama, or Buddha, tried to live without all of those things. There's even a story about how he tried to just live on 6 grains of rice a day and realized that that wasn't really the way to do it either. That gets us to the fourth noble truth in just a second. But he believed too that the way to end the suffering would be to end the desires. So if you don't desire so much, your suffering is going to go away. Once again, don't get crazy about it and just have 6 grains of rice. What he decided was you overcome desires, you attain enlightenment by following the eightfold path, the middle way between desires and self-denial. Here's the eightfold path. It's a lot of right things. You have the right understanding. You have the right thoughts. You say the right things, right speech. You commit the right deeds. You live or work in a right livelihood. Give forth right effort. Have right mindfulness and right concentration. And all of those things will get you to good karma, and then coming into the next life in a better place, hopefully at some point in time, to getting nirvana and complete understanding and peace and happiness. Finally, a different kind of spiritual belief called Judaism, one that you probably have heard of. Judaism is a monotheistic religion. It's really one of the first monotheistic religions that there was. It goes back to a guy by the name of Abraham, who was living in Mesopotamia. Abraham is the patriarch, or the father, of this group of people known as the Hebrews, or known as the Jews. There's a number of different names that they go by as well over time, Israelites and so on. But what makes this a monotheistic religion is that Abraham, according to Jews, made a covenant or a deal with a God, and this God said, that there are no other gods, and that Abraham should make a deal with him. And the deal was that if Abraham and his people obeyed this God would take care of them and protect them. And so Abraham has a number of people who are following him. He takes those people from Mesopotamia into a place called Canaan, which is more or less also known as Palestine, or more or less where Israel is today. And they travel around a little bit. There's a period of time when they left Canaan and went to Egypt. They were enslaved in Egypt. They were led out of Egypt by a guy by the name of Moses. Moses also talks to this God, Yahweh, and gives the Hebrews sacred texts and laws, which are recorded in this interesting thing to the left of the screen called the Torah. And within the Torah and what Moses gave the Hebrews, or Israelites, were 10 commandments, or 10 laws, that are the starting point for the laws that Jewish people, or Jews, had to follow to keep their God happy and to be protected by him. In reality, there are 613 commandments, but those first 10 are a good starting point. The rest of them are in the Torah as well. The Hebrews, after leaving Egypt, established a kingdom there. Once again, it's called many different things. Palestine, you could call it Palestine. There are 3 different kings that the kingdom of Israel had: Saul and David and Solomon. There's a lot of history there of Jewish people conflicting with one another, but really oftentimes being invaded by outsiders and being conquered by outsiders. For example, the Assyrians conquered the people of Israel, and then the Mesopotamians, or by this point in time, they're the Babylonians, conquered the people of Israel, and they were taken away. They were taken back to Mesopotamia as slaves, and were there until they were freed by somebody else who conquered the Babylonians. They're conquered by the Greeks, and they're conquered by the Romans, and they get involved in conflicts with the Romans because they didn't like being controlled by the Romans, and because the Romans were polytheistic. and the Romans didn't like the Jews for their monotheism. The conflict eventually leads to a rebellion and a war, and the Romans get so tired of dealing with the Jews that they decided to chase them out of their lands and spread them throughout the Roman Empire. And this is known as the diaspora. We'll talk a little bit more about the Jewish people as the year goes on. We'll talk a little bit more about them when we talk about the Roman Empire and how that conflict led to them being spread throughout the Roman Empire. I hope you enjoyed the info, and I hope that you got what you needed from the EQs. If not, let me know, and I'll see what I can do for you. Thanks. Have a great day.